We still have a couple more minutes before 6:30, so we'll wait for the other attendees. All right, ladies and gentlemen, if you'd like to come on screen, we'll get the meeting started. Councillor Buderick, Councillor Porter, Councillor Parks, Councillor Gordon, are you able to come on screen? And at this point, oh, there's the deputy. There's the deputy. And so we at this point are missing Councillor Townend, and Councillor Gordon was here a moment ago and is in the session, but he's not, no camera on at this point. Oh, Mr. Silver?
There he is.
That's Councillor Townend, thank you.
Councillor Townend was trying to get on. I was just going to tell you that.
Okay, thank you. All right, with that, I will call the meeting to order. This is the Committee of the Whole for December the 7th. Welcome, everyone. Call the meeting to order at 6:31. And we have an agenda before us with basically 3 items. Is there anything from staff to add or amend to this agenda? Anything from council? Seeing none, I'll look for a motion to approve the adoption of the agenda. Councillor Townend, seconded by Councillor Porter. Any comments or questions? Call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest in the general nature thereof? Seeing no hands, we'll move forward. We move into our staff reports. First up, 4.1, the preliminary 2021 budget report. And I believe Mr. Dickey or Mr. Renier are going to be presenting on this.
Hi, Your Honor. I will be presenting on this. I'm just going to share a screen with everybody. I did develop a little bit of a quick slideshow. It just highlights the report highlights. So I will, hopefully everyone can see that. Are we good?
I think we're good. Everyone else see it? I think so.
Yes.
So yeah, so as you said, just the preliminary 2021 budget report. All right, let's get my thing working. So really the purpose of the report was to bring council up to date so far on the challenges and implications to the 2020 proposed levy and what staff's kind of been working through. And we would also like council to approve and set dates for the actual committee of the whole budget meetings. So that's kind of the purpose of the report. In the report, we propose these 3 dates for the committee of the whole. So if council could either approve these or pick other dates as council sees fit. But we think it's a good time to set the dates now so we can properly communicate that to the public, to get as much feedback and participation from the public as possible. It's good to post the dates as early as possible. So just going through it, just high level, in preparing the 2021 budget, we have received our new assessment from MPAC, which is the new assessment that came on the roll in 2020. So based on that, we had about 1.9% in new assessment growth. And what that means for 2021 is an additional $335,000 in tax levy over 2020's level, just through the new assessment growth. It was about $40 million in assessment added to the roll in 2020, moving into next year. And that's just new assessment growth. And in preparing the budget, right now we're using an estimated 2% increase in the county rate. We haven't heard yet what the county's thinking. Maybe the mayor has some ideas, but that's what we're using so far. And we're using an estimated flat education rate. The last couple of years, the education rate's actually decreased. But just to be conservative, we are keeping it flat this year in terms of planning what the overall tax rate could possibly end up as. So just to speak to some of the challenges in preparing for the 2021 levy, the first challenge right now is the phase-in assessment. So I'm not sure how much people know about this, but 2020 was the last year of the 4-year assessment phase-in on existing properties. And like many things, due to the pandemic, the province has actually postponed having any phase-in on existing properties in 2021. It was supposed to be the first year of the new 4-year phase-in cycle. So what that means is if you had a $300,000 assessment in 2020, that's going to be the assessment again next year. So what that means for the township is, conservatively, we normally see about a 2% phase-in growth year over year, which is not having that next year is about a $350,000 loss for the township. So that's obviously a big challenge with a flat phase-in. So that's challenge number one. The second challenge is, and if in the report, we call them non-discretionary pressures. So these are basically pressures we're facing just due to prior decisions through council or agreements or third-party contracts. So things like 2% staff increases through our collective agreements. Insurance has gone up considerably. Utilities goes up. So all these things are non-discretionary. They are what they are in a sense. So just going through that list that this year and preparing our budget, we're already seeing about a 1.25 million in non-discretionary levy pressures. So as the slide says, when you add that to last year's levy requirement, you're kind of already at a base flat levy requirement draft of $18.5 million for 2021, which, to give you context, with no phase-in of assessment wouldn't be about a 3.5% overall tax rate increase just to get to that. And it's important to know that that number doesn't include strategic plan, SDR initiatives, any other new initiatives. That's just year over year increases added on. And with no phase-in, that's kind of the pressure we're facing. So just to paint that picture. And then the third challenge is obviously COVID-19 has budget pressure impacts. Preliminary, we've estimated about $450,000 for 2021. Since we've written that report, we've had some new numbers come in. It's probably closer to $500,000 now. And that's mainly made up of anticipated lost revenues from recreation, mainly some temporary staffing increases, where we've had to increase staffing potentially for things like cleaning at facilities and having backup support staff in case some staff members were to go down. And then that also includes a rough number for PPE and cleaning supplies. Now, I do want to mention that we haven't actually built that 450 or $500,000 into the levy requirement. We're hoping that to carry over some of the reserve money that we got this year from the province. Based on our 2020, we are still expecting a surplus position. So we're hoping to carry over that, the grant money we got to either cover 2021 expenses, or the plan would be to fund the difference through the working fund. So it's not actually hitting the levy requirement, but nonetheless, it's an operational pressure with the pandemic. It takes staff time away from other initiatives, so it's still a pressure on us. Going forward. So just briefly on utilities, the utilities is still coming in based on the rate study and then the water and sewer rates report that came to the last council meeting on November 23rd. So overall, there's an expected increase in the budget of 7% and 10% respectively. So based on the water rates that were approved, nothing's really changing from that. That is how they're building the budget towards that. In terms of capital, this has changed as well. So on here, we have a preliminary 10.2 general rate that now is closer to about 12.4 possibly, and about 4.3 million in utilities. Obviously, we're looking at different ways to fund that. We were having a meeting this morning to continue to evaluate the projects. So we're always looking for things like reserve funds, growth, DCs, impost, any grants we can get, because obviously that's a big impact. And it mentions here we're using a capital prioritization tool, which was attached to the report. So we're using that to try to really evaluate and prioritize which projects, for a variety of reasons, really need to take priority in what we bring to council. So that was just kind of a quick snapshot of the highlights of the report. So really, the purpose of this as well is hopefully to generate some of the discussion questions. Now that if there's things that council would like to see or expect, now would be a good time for us to help prepare us for the eventual budget presentation meetings in likely January. So I turn it over to council.
Thank you, Mr. Renier. Council, actually, can I get you to stop sharing the screen for a moment?
Yeah, let me. Oh, Debbie, I'm falling apart here. Oh, geez. How do I?
There we are.
There we go. Thank you, Debbie.
Okay, so that introduces us to what we're going to be looking at in January, February. Let's start with the dates. We have proposed dates of January 25th, 28th, and February 1st. Right? I'll look to council to see if we know of any conflicts, have any problems with those dates. Nobody? To the clerk, would you like a separate resolution for that? Yes. Okay. Can I get a motion to approve those dates? Councillor Townend, seconded by Councillor Buderick. Right. Any comments or questions? Right. Then I'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. Those dates are good. Now on to the question of the budget itself. Council, you've seen some of the pressures that Mr. Rainey has just laid out. Okay. The numbers that are obviously growing. Okay. Did you have any questions about that? Councillor Porter, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks very much for the information. Just, do you know what the current or the latest CPI numbers that were announced? They usually come out September, October. Do we have that information?
Yes. So, for example, the CPI number we used for staffing, for example, and for council, we used the 1.9% CPI. There's of course a million different CPI models, but that is a Bank of Canada CPI that we use for staffing. Was 1.9%, and that was October year over year.
Okay. Okay. I know, just to comment on the budget, I feel like we're caught between a rock and a hard place. You know, we don't want to, you know, especially this past year, we don't want to put additional hardship on people by increasing their property taxes, but at the same time, we still have to operate. And we're spending as if normal, but obviously we're not normal, and it's unfortunate that a lot of the decisions from the province and the federal government has impacted us financially at the municipal level, and you know, we're not seeing any or a lot of support there. And so that leads me to my next question, like, where are we at with any kind of support from the province or from the federal? Has there been any kind of communication or anything come down the pipeline that there will be money for us in the near future? Like, I'm a little concerned about that $500,000 cost that we're tagging for COVID.
Strania?
Yeah, through your honor. So as of right now in 2021, no additional funding has been earmarked or per se. That's not to say that additional things won't come down through the higher levels of government. Now, when we did get that initial $500,000 back in the fall, they did make it clear that if you're running surpluses this year or for whatever situation, is that, put that in a reserve to use into 2021, because there's still going to be impacts in 2021. Just so council knows too, that's just the general rate COVID pressures. That doesn't include pressures on like the ferry, for example, and with their wages or with their revenues and stuff. So we won't have that whole $500,000 available to us into 2021, but we're hoping we'll have some of it, and the rest of it we would potentially fund through working fund reserves that we do have on hand, so that we don't add further pressure to the levy impact outside of normal pressures that we face every year.
Okay. And
I
just
guess
one
that's a
other
long-winded way of saying we don't know.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
More funding.
And I just want to make a comment about something in the presentation or in the report that's mentioned. And I know that it was mentioned that no, that this budget is not considering additional funding that may be required for service delivery review. And I just want to say I'm hoping that service delivery review can also look at cutting costs somewhere. Right, that we're getting more efficient at doing things, or we're eliminating duplication or unnecessary items that we're doing. So it's not just that there's going to be additional costs associated with it. I'm hoping that we can actually come to a place where we're giving even better service than we're already giving, but it costing even less. So that's my view on service delivery. So it's kind of a little bit contradictory to your statement about needing more or not having accounted for the additional funds that may be required.
Go ahead, Phil.
Yeah, just to comment on that. Yeah, no, I definitely agree with you. So I think the way the report was just trying to demonstrate that just with the non-discretionary, we're kind of up to that 18.5, and that doesn't include additional costs, but certainly there will be things in the budget in terms of strategic plan and service delivery of new initiatives. And we do have savings that have been identified through things like service to bridge that gap and accomplish those new initiatives like you mentioned. That definitely is being worked into the budget that will come to council. I was just trying to paint the picture of kind of where just non-discretionary, and last year, this is kind of where we're at without taking into consideration those things.
And one very last comment is that I'm wondering if it'd be worthy of us doing some sort of motion or letter to the county, asking them to really tighten their belts and not present us with an increase at all in taxation. Whether that is possible or not, I don't know. They're under the same pressures we are, I guess, but to really reiterate that to the county level.
Well noted. Other comments? Questions? If you guys don't, oh, go ahead, Deputy.
Just to clarify, did I hear the statement correctly that the value that was shown for COVID expenses, the 450,000, I think it was, did that include staffing as well, or did I hear a comment that it didn't include staffing values?
It includes incremental staffing, potential staffing increases directly related to COVID. So for example, there's potentially in the budget, there might be an increase in CSR hours at the rec center and et cetera, or at the leisure center because of additional cleaning measures that we have to do. that in a normal year, we wouldn't have to incrementally increase those hours. So those kind of incremental things are in there. That's about 130, 150,000 potentially. Another one that would be COVID related is we may have to have some backup contracts for winter control, for example, because God forbid if we lose some public works operators, we still have to plow a road in a storm, right? So we need to have those contracts potentially on hand for that very important reason, that in non-pandemic years, maybe we wouldn't have to have some of these additional contracts. So those are included in that $500,000 number.
And if I may follow up on one of the points that Councillor Porter made, we have received some funding from the province based on some earlier estimations and some their calculations. Where do we sit on the balance of that one at this point?
Are you speaking to the $500,000-ish?
We received $500,000
Yep.
or roughly, I think it was like 480,000 and another 100,000 for transit, something like that.
Yeah. So the transit will be the 100-ish thousand for transit would definitely be used this year for the ferry due to all the lost revenues. And then the other 400,000, that's more general rate. Depending on where we end up at year end in a surplus position or not, we can carry that forward into 2021. So at this point, we're still looking like we're going to be in a surplus position, that we wouldn't need that funding in 2020 to balance our books.
Okay.
So that would, the hope is we can carry as much of that as possible forward to bridge, to soften the impact in 2021.
Thank you. Okay. Other members? It's an early look at our budget. One of the questions that always comes to mind is, our capital projects. A lot of the work that we had planned for this year, we got done, but there are pieces of what we had planned for this year that we did not get done. And so therefore there's capital budget that will go unused. I'm assuming most of that will be transferred forward into next year's capital budget, but there's a cost of money implication involved in that as well. Is that recognized in your planning?
It's definitely recognized in the planning we're doing. Just so we're clear, the capital number that was given in this report is new capital money for 2021. So there would be additional carry forward on top of that, potentially.
Okay. Thank you.
That's just the new money, new budget money.
Anybody else before I go back to Councillor Porter? Oh, go ahead, Penny.
Yeah, just further to Mayor Brzez's remark about the cost of money. I know that interest rates are way down. So has that impacted our budget at all as far as what we're saving in interest payments?
In terms of interest payments on existing debt right now, they're set. They're not variable interest rates, so we're not actually saving on terms of existing debts based on our agreements. The low interest rates is one of the budget pressures. I believe we have our deposit interest through our bank account. We're expected to lose almost $60,000 in 2021 because of the low interest rates. Because the deposit interest we get through our banking agreement is based on the Bank of Canada Prime, less a percentage. So we're actually hurt, whereas our long-term debt that we currently have on the books is, those are set rates. Now, in saying that, like you're saying, it's historically cheap lending rates right now. So now may be the time, if we're looking at debt and this and that for capital projects, it may be advantageous to get in at a low rate right now, as opposed to waiting on some of the projects. But we're not seeing any savings because our long-term debt is already fixed.
Is there any potential for converting that, buying out that long-term debt with new debt effectively at a lower rate?
We could certainly look into that. Some of the debt instruments are through things like Infrastructure Ontario, so they're generally
Fixed.
Not be quite as flexible.
Fair enough.
But we can certainly explore it. I mean, yes.
And I'm not sure how much savings that would actually generate to convert one debt to another, if there's fees, et cetera, but I'll leave that to you guys to figure out. Anybody else have questions? One of the things that this council has done in the past at times is set I'll call it a preliminary goal, a target for staff to work towards. I'm not sure if there's a willingness on this council to do it. Obviously, it's a very strange year. There are some things that are costing us a lot and will foreseeably into 2021, and some revenues that just won't be there, at least aren't right now, and we'll see what happens. So it's a tough year to make such a target, but if council is interested in doing that, I would entertain that discussion. It doesn't fix the value, it just provides the guidance statement to staff. No? Councillor Porter?
Yeah, all I can say to that is that, we want to aim for the lowest rate increase possible, especially this year. If we have to go for a lower rate this year and make up for it next year when people are back to work and people are feeling more normalized, let's hope. And that might be the answer. I just with the burden that's been put on everybody this year, and then we had water and sewer rates went up, which is going to be a tough for some families. I just would hate to see it make it even tougher. That's all.
And just for historic sake, if I recall correctly, last year we were at approximately 3%. The year before that, we were at just about one. Phil, go ahead.
Also, I was going to wait for you to finish, but I was just going to add to that. We were slightly over 3% overall tax rate last year, but I think the message with this year is, but that would have included a phase-in, which we don't have this year. So I think if council sees what other municipalities are doing, that's kind of the crunch everywhere, that you really got to look at the overall levy impact increase. So the example I used in the report is the $300,000 property. Yeah. With no phase-in. I know a lot of people like to focus on the overall tax rate increase, but that's only one half of the equation with the assessment. It's really a 2% increase with the phase-in. It's the equivalent. Whether that wants to be the target or we still strive for lower than that, I think we can't just focus on the tax rate increase this year. You got to factor in the no phase-in. And I think that's every municipality in the province is dealing with that and trying to communicate that.
Fair, thank you. And I see some nods from council. Any comments? I'll go with the deputy.
I'm not about to set a proposed rate or anything. This is such a weird year to begin with that we pretty much just need to have all the facts and then be able to make a decision. And so I'd rather they just brought everything forward under the assumption, which I'm sure they're going to do, is be as reasonable as possible. And it's not a wish list. It's a budget, and everyone knows that. And so bring the realistic numbers that we can actually look at and discuss and make a decision on. And then we'll have to, at the budget table, we'll have to make the tough decisions.
Absolutely. Other members? If there's nothing further, I would look for a motion to receive this report. We don't need anything else right now. I'll go with the deputy, seconded by Councillor Buderick. Okay. Any further comments? Then I'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you, Phil.
Thanks, everyone.
Next on the agenda, item 4.2, we have a request from the Conservation Authority with regard to the Bill 229, Protect, Support, and Recover from COVID-19 Act that's at the province right now. This is also the subject of a notice of motion that will be before council on the 14th. But with the messaging coming through from the Conservation Authority and the urgency to recognize this before it's passed, before the government moves to pass it, which should happen, will likely happen this week, I thought it most appropriate to bring it to this forum. Okay. Does any member of council have a question about the requests or the proposed changes? I see none. Okay. Go ahead, Deputy.
I guess my question is I don't recall the full notice of motion, but I'm assuming that it would or could entail everything that's included here. So we would be dealing with that Monday night because it would be on the agenda anyway then. Is that correct?
And based on the notice of motion that came forward from Councillor Townend, I would say this content is certainly addressed in that notice of motion, and it speaks directly to the motion. The notice of motion speaks directly to requesting that the province not implement Schedule 6 in Bill 229.
Okay, thank you.
Other members? Councillor Porter?
No question. I was just going to move to receive them all.
I'll take that motion in a moment. I just want to make sure there's no other questions or comments this time. Anyone? Okay, seeing none. Councillor Porter, you'll make the motion to receive it? And no, not support, just be clear.
Yes, we're going to deal with it at a full council meeting, the motion being brought forward or no so motion. So for now, I just as soon receive that and deal with it at that time.
Understood. I'll take that motion. Is there a seconder for that? Okay, I'll go with Councillor Gordon. Mover, comment?
No, not at this time.
Thank you. Seconder, comment? No? Anyone else? Councillor Townend.
Just a question to you, Your Worship. I mean, if we had, so was the proposal tonight to basically potentially have ratified basically Kingston's motion tonight, and that would go forward, because presumably a committee of the whole doesn't have that authority. Am I correct?
And I would agree. The committee of the whole doesn't have the authority to pass the resolution formally. That's what council is for. The committee of the whole could provide direction to the mayor to draft a letter immediately to get it into the hands of the government prior to its passage. Kind of thought that might be the direction for this evening, because let's face it, if the government deals with this bill this week, which we assume it will, our motion from your notice of motion from next week, well-intentioned and well-informed or not, it is beyond the date when it's passed. And anyone else? Okay. I do have a motion on the floor to receive for information. Okay. If there's no further comments, Councillor Townend, go ahead.
So just to be clear, Your Worship, so what would be possible for the committee to do is to provide you with direction to write a letter effective of the motion to remove Schedule 6 and get that into the hands of government this week.
Yes, that's my understanding.
Okay, well then through you, Your Worship, I would put the question to Councillor Porter whether that was news to her or not, and whether she would entertain a motion to that effect or not.
Councillor Porter?
No, no, I would not. There is a motion on the floor, and I'd like that to move forward. I am not in favor of, actually, let me put it this way. I'm in favor of change that's required. Maybe what's being proposed is not the best change possible, but it is an improvement over the way it was. And sure, maybe there needs to be more work done. And I agree that it's not perfect by any means, but what they're proposing is to go back.
Councillor Porter, you seem to be frozen. Councillor Porter? Can everyone else hear me right now? Okay, Councillor Porter appears to be the only one that's frozen. And am I seeing this correctly, that she's now dropped off the, oh no, she's here. Oh, Councillor Porter, we lost the
Yeah.
last half of your statement.
Yes, I'm sorry about that. My internet connection is unstable. But well, I'll try and repeat what I just said, because I went on for quite some time before I realized that nobody could hear me. Yeah, it's just that I'm in favor of change, and although this change has been a long time in coming, and I understand that they do provide a very valuable service, but they have grown enormously over the years. They have radically gotten away from their original mandate, and I know that this is why this came about. There was a lot of support for this from municipalities, from other municipalities, and I feel it's a long overdue change. And so although I'm not completely thrilled with what they're proposing, I still feel that it needs to move forward.
And thank you. Last call for comments. And Councillor Townend?
Point of
Yeah.
order, do I not get the last remark? I thought that was it.
And that was actually your response to Councillor Townend's previous comment. I will give you last comment. Councillor Townend, this is committee of the whole. It is deemed to be more relaxed than formal council.
No,
Go ahead,
no,
Councillor.
no,
Sorry.
that's fine.
And no other comments then? Oh, Deputy Mayor, go ahead.
So I've got a question more in the next steps, depending on what the outcome is tonight. So if there was a letter, if it was agreed, a motion went through for a letter to be sent, that would nullify the notice of motion then, because it would be a repeat to the same issue?
That would be a decision of next week's council. The notice of motions at this point still stands and will appear on the agenda for the next council meeting. Okay. But it is a notice of motion. If council deems that it's already been dealt with, then so be it. Then and council can choose not to move forward with it at the next meeting. Okay. But if council wants to continue with that notice of motion, then council can do so. And this would be a direction if Councillor Porter's motion goes through, then we've received the information and we'll use that for our own purposes. Right? Go ahead.
So, okay, so I've just got a comment as well then that I'll make at this time. I've tried to read up on this as much as I can, and I mean, there's already a lot of entities that have sent in objections to it, whether it's the OFA, AMO, and they somewhat mirror the same content, just tailored to their areas of expertise, typically, which you'd expect. And I do have concerns. I agree with Councillor Porter that change needed to happen. What I don't agree with is some of the steps that were taken and to bury it in a bill so that it doesn't get the full discussion that it should, and to bury it under a COVID budget bill. That in itself doesn't set well with me. I'm just trying to be perfectly honest, I'm just trying to make up my mind which is better, to just stay with the original motion and include everything in it, or to hurry a letter out and miss hitting some points.
Understood. And Councillor Budrick, go ahead.
Just to fire, since it is an open forum and kind of easy to say, I would be all in favor of getting a letter out as quickly as possible. I like what the city has kind of put together here. I've done some reading on it myself and agree with the deputy. And I also see where Councillor Porter's coming from. It is a big entity that's kind of needing some restructuring, but I'm really behind what the city draft motion is, and I'd like to support that as well.
Thank you. Other comments? I will add my own before I go back to the mover. Okay. Anyone wish to jump in first? Okay. Okay. I read over this particular bill very carefully. There are some 56 different clauses in it, only one of which, clause 6, is the one related to the conservation authorities and is the only one being addressed by these motions. And as the deputy noted, there have been a great number of bodies that have voiced their objections to this clause 6. My particular problem with it is the mandate that it says that conservation authorities will be populated only by members of council, and it gives the direction to those members that they must represent just their council, their municipal interests, and not the broader environmental or whole watershed interest, which was the foundation of the conservation authority structure in the first place. So I will not support a simple motion to receive, but that is the motion that is on the floor right now. Councillor Porter, you have final comment unless?
Yeah, well, my intent was that we would receive this information tonight and deal with the motion in the forum.
Yep.
And at the table that we can deal with the motion. I presume, I haven't seen a notice of motion, but I presume that if it came from Councillor Townend, it's well researched and all encompassing. So can you still hear me?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. So that was my thought. We would receive this. That was my thought. We would receive this information tonight and then deal with the notice of motion, or it could be a direct motion at the appropriate place, which would be council and not the committee of the whole. So, but let's vote on this, and then if someone else wants to add a motion to send a letter, I think that would be appropriate as well.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor to receive this for information, moved by Councillor Porter, seconded by Councillor Gordon. Right. I will call the question. All those in favor? 1, 2, 3. Those opposed? 2, 3, and I'll go opposed. So motion is defeated. And I look for an alternate motion. Councillor Townend, go ahead.
I would move to empower yourself, your worship, to write a letter effective of the sentiments to remove Schedule 6 from 229, Bill 229, and send those to the appropriate government bodies.
I'll take that as a motion. Do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Buderick. Mover comment?
Yeah, I just think that the I completely agree with Councillor Porter to the extent that in ideal circumstances, it is better for us to be able to discuss these things at length in council chambers. I think for those of us that are deeply aggrieved and opposed to what is proposed in Schedule 6, the government's sort of forced hands as far as being able to respond to it. Because it's a budget bill, there isn't a public consultation period. So it is rushing through the legislature. And I am, of course, our representative on the CRCA. And it has been the desire of the board that our watershed municipalities would pass something to the effect of a resolution, as Kingston did, or a letter, or something to the effect of trying to express our collective opinion that until the government consults further, that for the time being, Schedule 6 should be removed from that bill. So I do think it is a matter of some urgency. So I would prefer under this circumstance that the letter went ahead.
Thank you. Seconder, Councillor Budrick, comment? No? Others? Deputy, go ahead.
Just a question back to the move, or just for clarification. In your statement, if I understood the motion right, the letter is just to say remove. In your statement, you made the comment remove and do further review or something along those lines. Is that sort of, and if that is the intent, then should we include that in the letter? Because in my mind, that makes a very different statement. I could completely support remove and further review, and then it basically come back for more, like for passing at that time.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I've read several multiple resolutions from other councils that have attempted to address this. There have been actual motions in the committee stage that have been made now as well, that the Ontario Conservation Authority has responded to. So, you know, it is evolving and it is changing. And I think municipalities recognize that the government wants to make some changes. And of course, it's incumbent upon municipalities and conservation authorities to work with the government to do that. And so, yeah, I have seen resolutions that are definitely in a spirit of trying to work with the government, but this is to have Schedule 6 passed as is would be quite counterproductive. So the encouragement is to get the government to remove Schedule 6 from the bill as it stands, but agree to continue to work and consult in trying to do what the government wants to do.
Thank you. Councillor Porter, go ahead.
So just a question, Nathan, then. So your motion is for the mayor to do a letter to ask for it to remove to be in order for the municipalities to review Section 6 in its and so that not a motion from council, because we can't do a motion from council until next week, right? So you're asking for a letter today, and then that would negate any kind of requirement for a motion afterwards. Is that what your intent is?
Yes, that's correct. And then, I mean, my motion, because it was given as notice of motion at the last meeting, as the mayor said earlier, it will be on the agenda for next time. But if the letter goes through, it really probably will be moot at that point, in which case, you know, we may not have much to discuss.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you.
Any other comments? Anyone? Back to the mover for final comment? No? Okay, I will call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you. And we move on to item 4.3, the refreshment vehicle draft bylaw. We have a report here, I believe, from the clerk. Did you wish to speak to it?
It's there for information, Your Worship. So if there's questions, what we thought we would do is just bring it to a committee of the whole. Just there was direction to prepare one, so it's prepared. We weren't rushing with just with the pandemic, but we thought we'd bring it forward now because we will be having requirements for the spring. It's hard to think of the spring right now when we're moving into winter. But if there's any questions, and if not, what the intent would be is that the bylaw would be on the December 14th agenda to be adopted.
Okay. And members of the committee of the whole, do you have questions? Or yeah, I'll start with questions for this particular report. Anyone? Councillor Porter, go ahead.
Yes. So this bylaw, and I recall that the intention of bringing this bylaw forward, or council's direction, the intention of the council's direction was to clarify and simplify the whole process of refreshment vehicles like in the municipal parks. So the way I'm reading the bylaws, it stands, it seems to deal with all refreshment vehicles, whether they're on municipal property or not. So that's a change from the intent. That I understood the intent to be, and it's also would mean that anybody that wanted to set up a small refreshment stand or a refreshment trailer, whatever you want to call it, on private property would be subject to this bylaw as well.
To the clerk.
Okay, so through your worship, the bylaw's always been there that anybody that is coming into the municipality to operate a refreshment vehicle needs to be licensed. There are exemptions in there that if, say, somebody was coming in for, I know they've been at the school, say, for a fair day or something like that, and they've just brought in a pizza truck or something for like a day type thing, as long as they're licensed in another municipality, we wouldn't require them to be licensed. But if they're going to be operating within Loyalist Township, they would have to be licensed. So that's just to ensure the safety. They met TSSA insurance, where they're going to be. You know, there's nothing worse than if somebody just comes in and parks somewhere and it impacts neighbors. So we do have to have some control on that. So the intent is that the refreshment vehicle, it's a licensing bylaw. So the bylaw would license all refreshment vehicles. What was happening was the park part was through RFP, which was very cumbersome. We'd have to go out, request for proposals and that, where in this is a permitted process. So anybody who was interested, they could submit their request to operate one of the licensed vehicles, in the park. We've listed the parks. We've added 2 additional with the potential that could have it. So like probably more geared towards a hot dog cart or something along that. And then there's a criteria to rate them. So it should speed up the process in regards to somebody who wants to operate in the park. Again, it's not something that we get a large volume of people asking for it. So the intent was, again, to have a process in that makes it fairly easy for people to operate as a service.
Okay. I just wanted to be sure that if, like, the McKinnon Brothers Music Festival, all those food trucks, and that they won't have to go through a licensing process through us. Same with Canada Day. Can you hear me, or am I frozen?
You're just a little.
You're a little staticky, but we are hearing you.
Okay. So, same with Bath Canada Day and various other, hopefully, we get back to having festivals and music in the park and stuff like that, that on those vehicles, that this bylaw will not affect them.
Oh, sorry, through your worship, there is a section on that for fairs and like I say, the one-time operations and that. The biggest thing is to make sure they're licensed. Again, if it's a refreshment vehicle, sometimes it may be different. It depends on the packaged food and that. But anybody that's selling food, they need to be, we need to make sure that they are through the health unit, through all the safety regulations and everything else that they safely being able to sell food.
Yeah, it's just in section 11.1, the exemptions, they're pretty specific. Like you say fall fairs, auctions, community festivals, or any other council authorized event. So that's pretty specific. It doesn't cover music festivals. It doesn't cover. So I'm just wondering if we should just expand on that language a little bit so that what you're saying is interpreted correctly late years from now, right? Bylaws, we have a habit of looking back on bylaws that were passed 10, 15 years ago, and the intent was kind of wishy-washy, 15 years hence, right? So.
And go ahead.
Through your worship, we can look into it to make sure that wording's there. I think it's there, but we'll make sure and confirm that on Monday, if that's okay with Councillor Porter.
Yeah, just for clarity, I'm reading it, the language is there. It says fall fairs, auctions, community festivals. What I'm saying is that it's too narrowly defined. like it's making with a bylaw, when you identify an event, that becomes the event that you're allowed to have it with. I'm just saying we should expand that scope or make it a little more all encompassing.
Yeah, what if we had a maple syrup event or a spring fair?
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. I understand what Councilor Porter's saying, certainly, but I think the intent from the clerk and for this bylaw is that we don't have, I'll refer to them as rogue refreshment vehicles.
Yeah.
Parking on the side of the street, parking even on private property, popping up here, there, and everywhere with no licensing, no public health, no insurance, no TSSA, et cetera.
Yeah, I agree.
I think there's value, but I agree that there can be some, I'll say, clarity within that exceptions section. Other comments on this? I'll go to Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. Just a couple of questions for you to the clerk, I imagine. In section 2, it has the different classifications of the vehicles, class 1 and class 2. The examples that are given, when I picture them in my mind, they're virtually the same vehicle, like a food truck and a ice cream truck. So I'm wondering what the intent was with that. Like a food truck, I guess I picture it as something that prepares food, where the catering truck and the ice cream truck only serve food. And I wasn't sure if that was it.
Through your worship, that's exactly it. The one is basically prepackaged. So more your catering truck type trucks that, you know, tend to go to manufacturing, that they've got prepackaged sandwiches and things like that they sell, wherein the class 1 is more your chip trucks and that type of thing.
Okay, just with it being large vehicle and everything, I was trying to figure out how the size of vehicle in it came together, but that explains that one. One other question I had was just some clarification on 6.8D for venues where someone has rented the facility for a full day and has requested the temporary removal of a refreshment vehicle. So I guess what I'm picturing is if it's in a park and someone has rented the park for a family gathering or a wedding, would we make them actually remove the vehicle out of because once they're set up for the summer, they're set up and blocked and everything. Like that could be quite an onerous task for someone that is paying to be there.
I don't know. Sorry, through your worship. It's more, I'm trying to think of a situation that we've had where, you know, say like a ball at the Ball Diamond or something like that, or somebody's wanting to, you know, maybe that we say, can you just close down, you know, not open that day or something like that if the area has been rented. And again, I don't know that any of our parks that we rent per se that would, but say it was rented, the arena and the concession stand or something like that. I'm just kind of thinking off the top of my head now, but that's kind of the intent of it, is if somebody is renting the facility or the property, that, you know, they would potentially have the use if they wanted to bring in a food.
If I may just continue then.
It is committee of the whole.
In that case, I'm just wondering if we could just take a look at the wording then, rather than request temporary removal, but temporary closure or something like that. Because from what you've explained, it's more of a competition or bringing in outsiders into a private event, which may not be, it might be problematic for some. And I just have one very minor other item.
Go ahead.
On page 21 of the report here. It has Millhaven Creek Park, and it's actually Mill Creek Park.
Perfect.
Minor thing, but
no, that's good.
Might as well get it now. That was all.
Thank you. Others? And Councillor Gordon, go ahead.
I had a question about how we determine the, I guess the rates for the license fees. Is it based on similar municipalities that have the $300, for example, for a new license. The reason I ask is there's, give an example of, if you recall, going down the main street there in Kingston, where they used to have the little hot dog stands, and there was 3 of them across from City Hall. And of course, that's a very busy spot. But I know that the individuals there, I knew 2 of them, and they paid a few $1,000s a year just for these little hot dog stands. So across the street from where I live, the Fairfield Park, where the truck is parked there for a few months of the year, within about a block in one direction, there's 2 other restaurants, and a block and a half the other, there's 4 who are all competing for that same dollar, or same market rather, and all pay considerably more for rent and tax revenue and whatnot. So I just wonder if there's a unique situations that we should consider and say, well, maybe if you're going to park in our park and use our hydro and kind of use our facilities that way, perhaps you should pay a little bit more than that. That's just a thought. So
To the clerk, go ahead.
Yeah, through your worship, on that was discussed as to, again, of whether when we initiated this, of whether the allowing the chip trucks in our parks was a service that we were giving to the public, or whether we were looking at it that it was as a business. And I think the thing is that the discussion at that time and the direction that we had was that it was a service that we were offering people, that there would be food available in the parks. It's something that, again, the township doesn't have the resources to do. It would probably cost us more to operate them in the parks. So the intent wasn't that it was somewhat of a money maker, but we didn't want to lose money. So the fees are the same, I believe. I don't believe we put those up over the previous bylaw. And then when we looked at the costing for the leasing, if they were in our park, so the licensing is separate, and then the park permit was based on what we've looked at as traditionally our hydro costs are, the garbage and kind of administrative costs, that type of thing, and put it as that fee. And then of course it can be reviewed annually as well on that part. So it's kind of a pilot project to see that we are recouping all of our costs.
Okay. One of the questions I had, I know that some of this was initiated with concerns where you've got people that have been in the parks providing these services for a number of years. And, when we went to the RFP, it became who got their application in at 8 o'clock or 8:01 on a particular day or whatever that was, and people could lose their tenure in that spot. At the same time, do we give tenure to a particular spot, or do we make it more competitive? Do you feel that this form provides you with the tools to make those decisions to either continue with the existing or to entertain new applicants for the role?
Through your worship, it allows for, there is a scoring. So down under page 20, it goes through of a point system. So it somewhat takes it out of it puts it into points versus preference from staffing, that type of thing. It's around, using local grown healthy foods, sustainable business. So it has all those factors in it. Again, this isn't to, we're pleased with the 2 businesses that operate in the parks. Again, for the last at least 3 years, or the last, I think 2 times we've gone out to RFP. I think we've had to go out and solicit people to come in. So again, I think there's enough there that allows us to be able to go through a scoring system to have them in the parks.
Thank you. Any other questions with regard to this report? You've had a couple comments with some proposed wording changes that I'm sure the clerk has made note of. Is there anything else with this draft bylaw that we'd like to talk about? Seeing none, can I get a motion to receive and forward this to council with amendments? And from the deputy and seconded by Councillor Parks. And any comments? None? Anybody? Okay, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. Which brings us to item 5, adjournment. And do I have to fight for a motion for this one? And can I have a motion to adjourn, please? Deputy, seconded by, I'll go with Councillor Townend. Right. Call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. We are adjourned, folks. Have a great week. We'll see you next Monday.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.